A commercial jet loses both engines over Kansas farmland. 8 minutes until impact. The tower has no solutions. Then a calm female voice breaks through the static, "I can see your aircraft." Former fighter pilot. "I can talk you down." Nobody knew the quiet farmer's secret. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The Mayday call came through Sarah Chen's old military radio at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is United 2749. Dual engine failure at 18,000 feet. 157 souls on board. We are going down." Sarah dropped the wrench she was holding. Her hands, stained with tractor grease, froze in midair. That voice on the radio carried the kind of controlled panic that she recognized instantly. A pilot trying to sound calm while his world was falling apart. She ran outside her workshop and looked up at the sky. There. A Boeing 737, both engines dark and silent, gliding like a wounded bird. The aircraft was losing altitude fast, maybe 2,000 feet per minute. From her years of experience, Sarah knew exactly what that meant. The crew had maybe 8 minutes before they hit ground. 8 minutes to live or die. Sarah Chen had been farming her family's 400 acres in Kansas for 6 years. Corn, wheat, soybeans. Her neighbors knew her as the quiet woman who fixed her own equipment, worked dawn to dusk, and never talked about her past. They thought she was simple. Kind, but simple. A woman who had inherited land and decided to work it alone. They didn't know about the 12 years she had spent in the Air Force. They didn't know about the 2,000 hours she had flown in F-22 Raptors. They didn't know that in combat zones, other pilots had called her "Ghost" because she flew missions that seemed impossible and always came home. Nobody knew. That's exactly how Sarah wanted it. But today, 157 people were about to die unless someone helped them. Sarah grabbed her phone and dialed Kansas City Center, the air traffic control facility handling that airspace. "Kansas City Center, this is Sarah Chen. I'm a farmer 40 miles northwest of Wichita. I can see United 2749. They're not making it to any airport. Ma'am, we need to keep this line clear for emergency. I'm a former Air Force pilot. F-22 Raptor. 12 years of service. That aircraft has maybe 7 minutes before it hits dirt, and I have a flat harvested wheat field that could save 157 lives if someone gives me clearance to help." Silence on the other end. Then a different voice, older, with command authority. "This is Supervisor Martinez. What's your call sign?" "In the Air Force, they called me Ghost." Another pause. "Ghost? The ghost who flew the mission over?" "Yes, sir. That was me. But right now, I'm looking at a 737 that's coming down whether we like it or not. I have a field. I have experience. And I have 6 minutes left to make this work. Stand by." Through her binoculars, Sarah watched the 737 dropping lower. The pilots would be running through emergency procedures right now. Trying to restart the engines. Calculating glide distance. Looking for options that didn't exist. Commercial pilots were trained for engine failures. But losing both engines? That was nightmare territory. It had only happened a handful of times in aviation history. Most of those times, everyone died. Her radio crackled. "United 2749, this is Kansas City Center. We have a ground observer at your 2 o'clock position with military aviation experience. She's offering an emergency landing option on a wheat field. Do you want to attempt?" The pilot's response came fast. "Center, I'll take any option that isn't a crater." "Who's the observer?" "Former Air Force fighter pilot. Call sign Ghost." Even through the static, Sarah heard the pilot's sharp intake of breath. "Ghost? The ghost? United 2749, affirm. She's standing by on guard frequency 121.5. Sarah grabbed her handheld aviation radio and switched to the emergency frequency. Her hands were steady but her heart was pounding. This was the moment. Once she keyed that microphone, she was responsible. If this went wrong, if people died following her instructions, she would carry that weight forever. But if she did nothing, they would definitely die. She thought about her training. 12 years in the Air Force. 2,000 hours in the cockpit. 300 combat landings. She thought about every aircraft she'd guided, every impossible situation she'd navigated, every crisis she'd managed. This was what she'd trained for. Not for combat. For this. For the moment when someone needed her expertise more than they needed anything else in the world. She keyed the mic. United 2749, this is Ghost. I have visual on your aircraft. Do you copy? 3 seconds of silence. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. Maybe the pilots wouldn't respond. Maybe they'd think she was crazy. Maybe they'd refuse help from a farmer with a radio. Then the response came. Ghost, this is Captain Marcus Webb. I copy you loud and clear. His voice was steadier now. Hope did that to people. Please tell me you have good news. Sarah closed her eyes for half a second. Centered herself. When she opened them, she wasn't a farmer anymore. She was Ghost. The pilot who never lost an aircraft. The voice that brought people home. Captain, I have a harvested wheat field, 3/4 of a mile long, flat and clear. I can guide you in. But I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? Ma'am, I've heard stories about Ghost. If you're really her, then yes, I trust you. Those words changed everything. He knew the name. Knew the reputation. That meant he'd believe her instructions even when they seemed impossible. That meant he'd fight his instincts and follow her guidance. That meant they had a real chance. Good. What's your altitude? 16,000 feet and dropping. Rate of descent is 1,800 feet per minute. Sarah did the math in her head. That gives us about 8 minutes. How many passengers? 152 passengers, 5 crew. Full flight from Chicago to Phoenix. Everyone seated and belted. Flight attendants are securing the cabin now. Some passengers are not handling this well. Sarah could imagine. Crying, praying, people calling loved ones to say goodbye. In 8 minutes, those people would either walk away or become a statistic. Captain, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm going to walk you through this step by step. I've done this before. You've talked down a 737 onto a dirt field? No. But I've landed an F-22 on a highway in Iraq with one engine after taking enemy fire. I've put aircraft down in places they were never designed to land. The principles don't change. Aircraft is aircraft. Physics is physics. Okay. Okay. What do you need from me? Sarah looked at her field. She had harvested 3 weeks ago. The ground was firm, dry, perfect. She knew every inch of that land. Knew where the soil was hardest, where the drainage was best, where every rock and hole existed. First, talk to me about your aircraft. What's your landing speed? 737 lands at about 140 knots. But that's on a runway with. I know what it's designed for. Right now, I need to know what it can survive. What's your current airspeed? 180 knots and we're in a descent. I'm trying to maximize glide range. Good. Keep that speed for now. What's your weight? About 140,000 pounds with fuel and passengers. Sarah closed her eyes and calculated. Weight, speed, surface friction, stopping distance. The numbers ran through her mind like a computer. Captain, look at your 2 o'clock. See the large rectangular field? Harvested wheat stubble. I see it. That's your new runway. I need you to turn to heading 270. That will line you up east to west with the wind. Turning to 270. Sarah watched the 737 bank gently. The pilot was good. Keeping the turn smooth, not wasting altitude. What's your altitude now? 14,000 feet. How are your passengers? Captain Webb's voice dropped. Scared. Flight attendants are doing their best. We told them we're attempting an emergency landing. Some people are writing notes to their families. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She couldn't think about that. Couldn't think about the children on that plane, the mothers, the fathers. She needed to focus on physics and procedures. Captain, those people are going to walk away from this. But I need you to follow every instruction exactly. No second guessing. No hesitation. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now, I'm going to explain the terrain. The east end of my field has a tree line. You need to clear those trees by at least 100 feet. The field itself is 4,000 feet of flat, firm ground. The wheat stubble will create friction, more than pavement. That's going to help us. Help us or tear the landing gear off. Both. But the gear will hold long enough. What's your altitude? 12,000 feet. Still descending at 1,800 per minute. You're doing great. Now listen. At 10,000 feet, I want you to start configuring for landing. Flaps to position 5. Landing gear down. Ghost, deploying gear will increase drag. We'll descend faster. I know. But you need to commit now. No go-around option. No second chances. We do this once and we do it right. Silence for 3 seconds. Then, understood. Committing now. Sarah heard the change in the background noise as the landing gear deployed. The 737's aerodynamics shifted. The aircraft was committed now. They were landing in her field whether everything went perfect or not. Altitude 10,000 feet. Gear down and locked. Flaps at 5. Good. What's your airspeed? 165 knots. Perfect. Now, Captain, I need to know something. Have you ever done any glider training? No. All my training has been in powered aircraft. Okay. That's fine. Right now, you're basically flying a very heavy, very expensive glider. Every decision you make affects your glide ratio. Nose up, you slow down but descend faster. Nose down, you speed up but extend your range. You need to find the sweet spot. What's the sweet spot for a 737 with no engines? About 160 knots. That gives you maximum glide distance. You're at 165 now, so you're good. Altitude 8,000 feet. Sarah started jogging toward the center of her field. She needed to see everything, every angle, every potential problem. Captain, I'm going to walk you through the obstacles. There are power lines on the south edge of the field. You need to stay north. Give yourself 500 feet clearance. Copy. Power lines south side. Stay north. Wind is west-southwest at 12 knots. You'll feel a crosswind on approach. Your aircraft will want to drift south. Don't let it. Use rudder to stay aligned. How do you know the wind speed? I've been farming in this wind my entire life. Trust me. Altitude 6,000 feet. I can see your field clearly now. It looks small. It's 4,000 feet. You need 3,500. We have enough. Barely. Barely is enough. Now, increase flaps to 15. We need more drag. Flaps 15. What's your descent rate? 2,000 feet per minute. We're coming down faster. That's expected. What's your airspeed? 155 knots. Too slow. Nose down slightly. Get back to 160. Nose down. Airspeed increasing. 160 knots. Good. Hold that speed. Altitude? 4,000 feet. 3 minutes until impact. Sarah could see people inside the 737 now. Faces pressed against windows. She wondered what they were thinking. Wondered if they believed they would survive. She couldn't let them down. Captain, talk to me about your passengers. Anyone special on board I should know about? Why does that matter? Because right now, you're flying on instruments and training. I need you to remember you're flying for people. Real people with real lives. A pause. Then Captain Webb's voice, softer now. Row 23, Seat C, Jennifer Martinez, 8 months pregnant. Flying home to Phoenix for her baby shower. Row 15, Seats A and B, elderly couple, married 60 years, going to visit their grandchildren. Row 7, Seat F, 10-year-old boy traveling alone to see his dad. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes but pushed them back. Then we better make sure Jennifer gets to that baby shower. Altitude? 2,500 feet. Flaps to 30. Full landing configuration. Flaps 30. We're really coming down now, Ghost. I know. That's normal. You're committed to landing. Your brain is going to scream at you that you're descending too fast, that you're going to crash. Ignore it. Trust your instruments. Trust me. Trusting you. Altitude 2,000 feet. You're going to cross the tree line at about 400 feet. When you do, I want you at 145 knots, nose up, ready to flare. Same technique as any runway landing. Except runways don't have wheat stubble. The stubble is your friend. It's going to grab your tires and slow you down. You're going to feel the aircraft shudder and shake. That's normal. Don't fight it. Altitude 1,500 feet. I can see individual trees now. Good. How are your passengers? Flight attendants just called. Everyone's in brace position. Some people crying, some praying. One woman is singing to her daughter. Sarah's throat tightened. They're all going to be okay, Captain. Stay focused. Altitude? 1,000 feet. Tree line coming up fast. Airspeed? 150 knots. Bringing it down to 145. Perfect. You're doing everything right. Remember, when you clear the trees, you'll feel ground effect. The aircraft will want to float. Let it. Use every inch of that field. Altitude 500 feet. Trees are right there. Stay calm. You've done this 1,000 times. This is just another landing. On dirt. With 157 people. With no engines. Focus, Captain. Altitude? 400 feet. Crossing the trees, now. Cleared by 80 feet. Beautiful. Flare now. Bring the nose up. Flaring. Airspeed 140 knots. Sarah held her breath. This was it. The moment where everything either worked or didn't. The 737 floated above her wheat field, nose up, main gear reaching for ground. Then contact. The main landing gear hit the wheat stubble with a sound like thunder. The aircraft bounced once, hard, then slammed down again. The tires started churning through the stubble, not rolling smoothly like on pavement, but plowing through stalks and dirt. Brakes! Sarah shouted. Everything you've got. Full reverse thrust. No engines for reverse thrust. Just brakes. Then stand on those brakes, Captain. The 737 was decelerating, but not fast enough. The wheat stubble was helping, creating massive friction, but the aircraft was still moving too fast. Sarah watched in horror as the jet ate up her field, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet. The western tree line was coming up fast. "You're at 3,500 feet. Sarah yelled. "Still moving. Brakes are maxed. We're not going to stop." Then Sarah saw it. The slight drainage grade she knew was there. Just a 3-degree slope, barely noticeable. But at these speeds, 3 degrees was everything. The 737 hit the grade and pitched nose down slightly. The extra friction from the angle helped. The aircraft was slowing, 60 knots, 50, 40. It stopped 200 feet from the trees. Complete silence. Sarah was running before her brain caught up, sprinting across her field toward the aircraft. Behind her, she heard sirens. Fire trucks and ambulances, already racing from town. The 737 sat in her field, nose gear bent at an angle, all 3 landing gear assemblies stressed but intact. The fuselage was covered in dirt and weak chaff. But the cabin was intact. No fire. No explosion. Just a very dirty commercial airliner sitting in a Kansas wheat field. The emergency exits burst open. Evacuation slides deployed. Then people started coming out. Sarah counted them. 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. Passengers sliding down, stumbling into the field, then collapsing on the ground in shock or relief or both. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Some were doing both at once. Captain Webb emerged from the cockpit door. His uniform was soaked with sweat. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the slide as he came down. He saw Sarah and walked over. "You're Ghost." "I'm Sarah Chen. The farmer." Captain Webb just stared at her. Overalls, work boots, dirt under her fingernails. "You're the fighter pilot." "The Ghost?" "Was. Now I'm just someone who grows wheat. You just talked down a 737 onto a dirt field." Everyone walked away. His voice broke. Everyone walked away. "You did the flying, Captain. I just gave you information. You gave me hope. When I heard Ghost on the radio, I knew we had a chance. The stories about you in the Air Force, they said you could land anything anywhere. Stories exaggerate. Do they?" He gestured at the 737 sitting in her field. "Because that seems pretty impossible to me." Emergency vehicles were arriving now. Paramedics were checking passengers. Fire crews were spraying foam on the engines as a precaution. The FAA would be here within the hour. But right now, in this moment, 157 people were standing in a wheat field, alive, because a farmer had picked up a radio and refused to let them die. A woman approached Sarah, tears streaming down her face. She was heavily pregnant, one hand on her belly. "Are you the one who saved us?" "The pilot saved you." You saved us." The woman grabbed Sarah's hand. "I'm Jennifer Martinez. I'm 8 months pregnant. I was writing a letter to my baby, telling her I was sorry I wouldn't get to meet her. And then you. She couldn't finish. She just hugged Sarah and cried. Over the next hour, more passengers approached. The elderly couple who'd been married 60 years walked up together, holding hands. The man spoke first. "I'm Harold Peterson. This is my wife, Margaret. We were on our way to meet our first great-grandchild. A little girl named Emma." Margaret's voice shook. "I was holding Harold's hand when we hit the ground. I was certain we were going to die together. We'd made peace with it. And then we survived. Because of you. Harold pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a photo. A tiny baby in a hospital blanket. Emma was born yesterday. We met her this morning because you gave us that chance. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. The 10-year-old boy came next. His name was Tyler Bennett. He was small for his age, wearing a superhero t-shirt and clutching a backpack. My dad is in the army, Tyler said quietly. He's stationed in Phoenix. I only get to see him twice a year. I thought today I wouldn't see him at all. He looked up at Sarah with serious eyes. You saved me so I could see my dad. That's the best thing anyone ever did for me. Sarah knelt down to his level. Your dad is lucky to have a brave son like you. You stayed calm up there, didn't you? Tyler nodded. I was scared. But I remembered what my dad says. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what you need to do even when you're scared. Your dad is right. And he'd be proud of you today. A businessman in his 40s approached next. His expensive suit was wrinkled and dirty. His tie was loose. David Morrison, he said, extending his hand. I spent the entire descent texting my daughter. Telling her I loved her. Apologizing for missing her piano recitals and soccer games. For choosing work over family. His voice cracked. I was saying goodbye. He pulled out his phone and showed Sarah the text thread. Dozens of messages. All saying the things he'd never said enough. She texted back. Said she loved me too. Said she forgave me. And now I get the chance to actually be the father I promised her I'd be. That's because of you. A woman in her 30s stepped forward. She wore teacher's clothes and had kind eyes. I'm Rachel Torres. I teach 3rd grade. 28 students. I was supposed to be back for class tomorrow. She wiped her eyes. I kept thinking about my kids. About who would teach them. About the lesson plans I'd never finish. About all the children I'd never get to help. She smiled through her tears. Now I get to go back. Get to teach them about courage and quick thinking and how sometimes heroes wear overalls and work on farms. You're going to be part of my lesson plan for the rest of my career. Each one wanted to say thank you. Each one wanted to touch the woman who'd saved their lives. Each one had a story about what they'd thought in those final moments, and what they'd do with the second chance they'd been given. Sarah didn't know what to say to them. She'd just done what needed to be done. But hearing their stories, seeing their faces, understanding the weight of what 157 lives actually meant, it changed something inside her. The FAA arrived with 3 vehicles and a team of 8 investigators. They interviewed Sarah for 2 hours, recording every detail. They wanted to know her exact position when she first saw the aircraft. The calculations she'd made. The information she'd given Captain Webb. Every word of communication. Robert Kane, the lead investigator, had brought a team of engineers with him. They measured the field, analyzed the soil composition, calculated the friction coefficients of wheat stubble. They examined every inch of the landing path, documenting the touchdown point, the skid marks, the stressed landing gear. Ms. Chen, one of the engineers said, pulling up data on a tablet, according to our calculations, this aircraft should have required at least 4,200 feet to stop on this surface. You had 4,000 feet available. The margin for error was essentially 0. I knew about the drainage grade, Sarah explained. That 3-degree slope at the far end. I calculated it would add approximately 15% more braking friction. That gave us the extra 200 feet we needed. The engineer stared at her. You calculated coefficient of friction adjustments for a drainage grade in your head while talking down a 737? That's what combat controllers do. We calculate constantly. Runway length, wind speed, aircraft weight, approach angles. It becomes automatic after a while. Kane took detailed notes on everything. He examined the aircraft, the field, the approach path. He interviewed Captain Webb 3 separate times. He reviewed the radio transmissions and the cockpit voice recorder. Finally, after 6 hours of investigation, he approached Sarah one more time. "Ms. Chen, I've investigated hundreds of crashes. I've seen what happens when aircraft lose both engines and try to land off airport. The survival rate is about 40%. The fact that everyone walked away from this is unprecedented. The captain did excellent work. The captain followed your instructions. He's told me repeatedly that without you, they would have crashed." Kane paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've been doing this job for 25 years. I've seen incredible piloting. I've seen miraculous survivals. But I've never seen anything like this. The precision required, the timing, the knowledge of your field, the understanding of aircraft performance, the psychological management of keeping a panicked pilot focused. This wasn't luck. This was expertise meeting opportunity." He showed her his tablet. "The audio recording from your radio transmissions. I've listened to it 6 times now. Your voice never wavers. You were calm, precise, authoritative. Like you'd done this before. Different aircraft. Same principles." Kane smiled slightly. "You're being modest. I called the Air Force. Spoke with your former commanding officer, General Patricia Whitmore. She told me about you. About Ghost. About the missions you flew that are still classified. She said you were the best combat controller she ever saw. Said you had an instinct for aviation that couldn't be taught." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "That was a long time ago. Was it?" Kane gestured toward the 737. "Because from where I'm standing, Ghost never retired. She just changed uniforms. I'm a farmer now. You're a farmer who just saved 157 lives." That evening, the news was everywhere. Every channel, every website, every social media platform. Former fighter pilot saves 157 lives. Ghost returns, legend guides crippled 737 to miracle landing. She was just a farmer until she wasn't. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop ringing. News organizations wanting interviews. The airline wanting to thank her. Passengers wanting to tell their stories. But there was one call she answered. "Is this Ghost?" The voice was young, male, formal. "This is Sarah Chen." "Ma'am, this is Captain Tyler Ross, 27th Fighter Squadron, Langley Air Force Base. I'm currently on patrol over Kansas as part of a training exercise. My flight lead said we should contact you." Sarah walked outside. Looked up at the darkening sky. "Why's that, Captain?" "Because he said Ghost saved 157 people today, and we wanted to say something." Then she heard it. A sound she hadn't heard in 6 years. The distinctive roar of F-22 Raptors. Not just 2. 4 of them. They appeared from the east in perfect diamond formation, flying low and slow, about 1,000 feet above her farm. The lead aircraft was so close Sarah could see the pilot in the cockpit. As they approached her position, all 4 aircraft simultaneously tilted their wings left, then right, then left again. The missing man formation salute, reserved for fallen pilots. But she wasn't fallen. She was standing right here. Then they flew directly over her field, right over the exact spot where the 737 had landed. They held formation, perfectly aligned, engines thundering so loud the ground shook beneath Sarah's feet. The lead aircraft broke formation, pulling up into a steep vertical climb while the other 3 continued straight. Higher and higher the single F-22 climbed, afterburner igniting, leaving a trail of fire across the darkening sky. It was the missing man formation, but reversed. The missing pilot had returned. Sarah's hands were shaking. Tears streamed down her face. The 3 remaining aircraft pulled up together, climbing after their leader. At 10,000 feet, all 4 rolled inverted in perfect synchronization, flying upside down for 5 seconds. Another salute. Then they rolled back, reformed into diamond formation, and flew one more pass directly overhead. "Ma'am," Captain Ross's voice came through her phone, thick with emotion. "My flight lead is Colonel Marcus Stone. He says he flew with you in Afghanistan. He says you saved his life twice in Helmand Province. Once when you talked him through a hydraulic failure, and once when you guided him to a dirt strip with one engine on fire." Sarah remembered. Marcus had been young then, barely 25, flying his first combat deployment. She'd been the voice in his headset when everything went wrong. "Colonel Stone says to tell you that every pilot in the 27th Fighter Squadron knows the name Ghost. They know the stories. They know what you did in combat. And they know what you did today. He says once you're Ghost, you're always Ghost. The entire 27th Fighter Squadron salutes you." The F-22s pulled up one final time into a steep climb, all 4 aircraft together, afterburners creating pillars of fire against the darkening sky. They climbed until they were just specks, then one by one, they peeled off in different directions and disappeared into the clouds. Sarah stood in her field, watching the sky where the fighters had been, listening to the fading thunder of their engines. The same sky where, hours ago, a crippled 737 had fallen from the clouds, and she'd refused to let it crash. Her phone rang again. The caller ID said, "Captain Webb." "Sarah, it's Marcus Webb. I need to tell you something." "Go ahead, Captain. I looked you up. Read about your service record. The missions you flew. The pilots you saved. The call sign Ghost wasn't just because you flew stealth missions. It was because people said you appeared when they needed you most, like a ghost, and saved them. That was a long time ago." "No, it wasn't. It was today. You appeared when 157 people needed you most. You saved us. Captain. Let me finish. I've been flying commercial for 8 years. I thought I was good. Today, I learned that being good means knowing when to trust someone better than you. You're the reason my passengers are alive. You're the reason Jennifer Martinez is going to have her baby. You're the reason that little boy gets to see his dad. You're the reason those grandparents get to meet their grandchildren." Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. "You can go back to farming," Webb continued. "You can pretend you're just a regular person. But you're not. You're Ghost. And today, you reminded everyone what that means." After he hung up, Sarah walked to her workshop. The same workshop where she'd been fixing a tractor when the Mayday call came through. The same place where her old military radio sat, always on, just in case. She looked at the photo on her wall. Her old squadron. 23 pilots, all wearing flight suits, all standing in front of F-22 Raptors. She was in the middle, the only woman, looking serious and determined. That was 12 years ago. Another life. Another person. Or was it? Maybe you never stopped being who you really were. Maybe you just found different ways to use your skills. Today, she'd used 12 years of fighter pilot experience to save 157 lives. She'd done it wearing overalls instead of a flight suit, standing in a wheat field instead of a cockpit. But the mission was the same. Save lives. Bring people home. 3 days later, a package arrived. Inside was a flight helmet. Not just any helmet. An F-22 pilot's helmet, custom-made, with her old call sign painted on the side, Ghost. The note inside was simple. To Sarah, Ghost, Chen. From the 27th Fighter Squadron. Once you're one of us, you're always one of us. Thank you for reminding us what it means to be a pilot. And thank you for saving 157 lives. Your brothers and sisters in the Air Force salute you. Sarah put the helmet on her workshop shelf, right next to the old photo. Some days, when she was working on equipment or checking her fields, she'd look at it and remember. Remember Captain Webb's voice going from panic to focused. Remember the 737 dropping from the sky. Remember 157 people walking away from an aircraft that should have killed them all. Remember the F-22s flying overhead, wings tilting in salute. She was a farmer now. That was true. But she was also Ghost. And Ghost didn't let people die. Not in Afghanistan. Not in Kansas. Not ever. 1 month later, Sarah received a visitor. A car pulled up her driveway, official government plates. A man in an Air Force uniform got out. Colonel Marcus Stone, the same pilot who'd flown over her field in the F-22. Sarah Chen, he said, smiling. Or should I say Ghost? Marcus Stone. It's been a long time. 6 years. You disappeared after you retired. Stopped answering calls. Stopped coming to reunions. I wanted peace. Find it? Sarah looked at her field, at the tracks where the 737 had landed, still visible in the dirt. Sometimes. Until a plane falls out of the sky. Marcus laughed. That's why I'm here. The Air Force wants you back. I'm retired. Not flying. Teaching. We want you to train the next generation of pilots. Show them that the skills we teach in the cockpit matter everywhere. That a real pilot can land anything, anywhere, anytime. I'm a farmer. You're Ghost. And the Air Force needs Ghost. Sarah thought about it. Thought about Captain Webb and his 157 passengers. Thought about Jennifer Martinez and her unborn baby. Thought about that 10-year-old boy who got to see his dad. Part-time, she said finally. I still have crops to plant. Marcus smiled. Deal. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in front of a classroom of young Air Force pilots at Herbert Field in Florida. She wore her old flight suit, the one she'd kept in a box in her closet for 6 years. The one she thought she'd never wear again. 25 faces stared at her. Young men and women, all training to fly F-22s. All believing they were learning skills they'd only use in combat. My name is Sarah Chen, she began. In the Air Force, they called me Ghost. Most of you have probably heard the stories. A few nods. A few whispers. Today, I'm going to tell you about a mission I flew 5 weeks ago. Not in Afghanistan. Not in Iraq. Not in any combat zone. I flew it in a wheat field in Kansas while wearing overalls and work boots. She pulled up a photo on the screen behind her. The 737 sitting in her field, dirt-covered and broken but intact. This is United 2749. Boeing 737. Dual-engine failure at 18,000 feet. 157 souls on board. They had 8 minutes before impact. No airports within range. No options. The room was completely silent. I was in my workshop fixing a tractor when I heard the Mayday call. I could have ignored it. Could have called 911 and hoped someone else would handle it. But I had knowledge that could help. And knowledge without action is just information. She clicked to the next slide. Audio waveforms showing her radio communications with Captain Webb. I'm going to play you the audio recording of what happened next. I want you to listen carefully. Not just to what I say, but to how I say it. Because someday, you might be the person someone needs to trust with their life. She played the recording. 8 minutes of communication. Her voice calm and steady. Captain Webb's voice moving from panic to focus to relief. When it ended, one of the pilots raised his hand. Ma'am, were you scared? Terrified. I was giving instructions for a landing I'd never done before. I was responsible for 157 lives. But fear doesn't disqualify you from acting. Fear is just information telling you the stakes are high. Another hand went up. How did you know it would work? I didn't. Not for certain. But I knew the physics. I knew my field. I knew that doing something gave them a chance, while doing nothing meant certain death. So I chose action. She advanced to the next slide. Photos of the passengers. Jennifer Martinez holding her newborn baby. The elderly couple with their grandchildren. The 10-year-old boy with his father. These people are alive because I refuse to forget what you're learning here. Because 12 years after my last combat mission, I still remembered how to guide an aircraft under pressure. Your training doesn't expire when you retire. It transforms. A female pilot in the front row spoke up. Ma'am, the news said the F-22s from Langley flew over and saluted you. Is that true? Sarah smiled. It is. Colonel Stone was my squadron leader in Afghanistan. He wanted to remind me that once you're part of this family, you're always part of it. She paused, looking at each young face. Some of you will fly combat missions. Some of you will have careers that never see battle. But all of you will face moments where someone's life depends on your knowledge and your courage. When that moment comes, remember this, you don't need permission to help. You just need the will to act. After the class, several pilots approached her with questions. One of them, a young woman named Lieutenant Amy Chen, stayed after the others left. Ma'am, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why did you leave? You were a legend. You could have stayed in, commanded squadrons, trained pilots from inside the Air Force. Why walk away? Sarah considered the question. I left because I thought I was done. Thought I'd given enough. Thought I could find peace in a simple life. She smiled. Turns out peace doesn't mean stopping. It means finding new ways to serve. Do you regret leaving? No. Because if I'd stayed in, I wouldn't have been in that field when United 2749 needed me. Everything I learned in the Air Force, everything I learned from farming, all of it came together that day. I needed both lives to save those people. Lieutenant Chen nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am. For showing us that our training matters beyond the cockpit. It always matters. Remember that. 6 months after the landing, Sarah received an invitation. United Airlines was holding a ceremony to honor Captain Webb and his crew. They wanted Sarah there. She almost didn't go. Ceremonies made her uncomfortable. Recognition felt wrong for doing what she'd been trained to do. But Jennifer Martinez had called personally. Please come, she'd said. I want you to meet someone. So Sarah went. The ceremony was held in a hotel ballroom in Phoenix. 200 people attended. Passengers from Flight 2749, their families, airline executives, FAA officials, news reporters. Captain Webb gave a speech about the landing. About the terror of losing both engines. About the calm voice on the radio that gave him hope. About 157 people who walked away from an impossible situation. Then he called Sarah to the stage. She walked up, uncomfortable in the dress she'd bought specifically for this event. She preferred her overalls. Sarah Chen saved my life, Webb said. She saved 157 lives. And she did it because she refused to let us die. The airline wants to present her with a token of our gratitude. The CEO of United Airlines handed her a plaque. Crystal and brass, engraved with the date and the words, to Sarah Chen, Ghost, who gave 157 people a second chance. Sarah accepted it with a nod. Started to walk off stage. Wait, Jennifer Martinez called out. She stood up from her seat, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Sarah, I need you to meet someone. Jennifer walked to the stage and held out the baby. This is Sophia Grace Martinez. Born 6 weeks after you saved my life. I named her Sophia because it means wisdom. And Grace because that's what you showed us that day. Sarah looked at the baby. Tiny fingers. Peaceful face. A life that existed because 157 people had survived. Would you like to hold her? Jennifer asked. Sarah had never been comfortable with babies. Had never planned to have children. Had chosen a solitary life. But she took Sophia Grace Martinez in her arms and felt something shift inside her chest. This baby existed because of a decision Sarah had made. Because she'd picked up a radio instead of standing by. Because she'd chosen action over fear. Hello, Sophia, Sarah whispered. Your mom is very brave. She trusted a stranger's voice while falling from the sky. That takes courage. Jennifer was crying. You gave me the chance to meet my daughter. How do I thank you for that? You just did, Sarah said, handing the baby back. You named her Grace. That's enough. The ceremony continued. More speeches. More thank yous. The 10-year-old boy, now 11, read a letter he'd written about the day his plane fell from the sky and a farmer's voice saved him. The elderly couple presented Sarah with a photo. Their family at Thanksgiving, 3 generations together because Grandma and Grandpa had survived Flight 2749. A businessman gave her a scholarship fund he'd created in her name for young women studying aviation. A teacher showed her letters from her students, all inspired by the story of Ghost. By the end, Sarah's hands were full of gifts and her eyes were full of tears she couldn't quite push back. Captain Webb found her afterward, in the hallway, away from the crowd. You okay? He asked. Overwhelmed. I just did what needed to be done. You saved 157 lives. You changed 157 futures. Jennifer's baby, those grandchildren, all the people will impact going forward. You did that. Sarah shook her head. We did that. You flew that aircraft. You kept your head. You trusted instructions that seemed impossible. I trusted Ghost. I'm not Ghost anymore. I'm just a farmer. Webb smiled. You're Ghost in overalls. There's a difference. 1 year after the landing, Sarah's life had changed in ways she never expected. She still farmed. Still worked her 400 acres. Still fixed her own equipment and woke up at dawn to check her crops. But 3 times a year, she flew to Florida to teach young pilots at Herbert Field. And once a month, she spoke at schools, showing children that knowledge and courage could save lives. And every Tuesday at 2:47 p.m., she paused whatever she was doing and looked at the sky. Remembered the moment she heard the Mayday call. Remembered choosing to help instead of standing by. Her workshop radio still sat on the bench, always on. Old habit. She still listened to the chatter of small planes and crop dusters flying over her property. Just in case. Just in case someone needed her. Just in case another plane fell from the sky. On the anniversary of the landing, a documentary crew came to her farm. They wanted to film the field where the miracle had happened. Wanted to interview Sarah about that day. She agreed, reluctantly. They set up cameras in her wheat field. The same field where, 1 year ago, a 737 had torn through the earth and stopped 200 feet from the trees. Tell us what you were thinking, the interviewer asked, when you heard the Mayday call. Sarah looked at the field. The tracks were gone now, covered by new growth. But she could still see exactly where the aircraft had touched down. Could still hear the sound of the impact. I was thinking that someone had a problem I could solve. That knowledge without action is worthless. That sometimes the person who saves lives is wearing overalls instead of a uniform. Do you think of yourself as a hero? Sarah considered the question. No. Heroes are people who act without training, without knowledge. They're brave because they have no idea what they're doing. I knew exactly what I was doing. I'd done it 300 times before in combat. This was just mission 301. But this time you were a civilian. No. This time I was a pilot who happened to be farming. There's a difference. The interviewer smiled. One more question. If it happened again tomorrow, would you do the same thing? Sarah didn't hesitate. Yes. Every time. Because that's what pilots do. We bring people home. That night, Sarah stood in her field under the stars. The same field where, 1 year ago, she'd guided a crippled 737 to safety. The same field where 157 people had walked away from certain death. She thought about the life she'd built here. Quiet. Simple. Peaceful. She thought about the life she'd left behind. Flying missions that seemed impossible. Being Ghost. They weren't different lives. They never had been. She'd always been Ghost. The overalls and the tractor didn't change that. Ghost wasn't a call sign. It was who she was. A pilot who refused to let people die. A pilot who appeared when needed most. A pilot who saved lives, whether from the cockpit of an F-22 or the middle of a Kansas wheat field. Her phone buzzed. A text message from Lieutenant Amy Chen, the young pilot from her class. Ma'am, had my first emergency today. Engine fire on takeoff. Remembered what you taught us. Stayed calm. Followed procedures. Everyone safe. Thank you for showing me that fear is just information. Sarah smiled and typed back, you did the hard part. I just gave you the words. Proud of you. She put her phone away and looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, planes were flying. Pilots were guiding passengers safely home. And if something went wrong, if engines failed or systems malfunctioned, somewhere there was a pilot like her. Someone with knowledge and courage. Someone who would choose action over fear. Someone who would refuse to let people die. Ghost or not, that's what pilots did. And Sarah Chen, farmer and former fighter pilot, would always be a pilot first. She walked back to her workshop, past the F-22 helmet on her shelf, past the photo of her old squadron, past the plaque from United Airlines. Her radio crackled with static. Just noise. Just the sound of the night sky. But Sarah listened anyway. Just in case. Because that's what Ghost did. And Ghost never stopped listening.